Hello, everybody. Welcome. Tesla stock is flat at $200 per share, 46 PE ratio, $626 billion market cap. Dow Jones down 0.3%, Nasdaq down 0.6%, S&P 500 down 0.3%. Technology companies generally are down, except for Nvidia. Nvidia is up a couple percent. Eli Lilly up 4%. Healthcare sector is up quite a bit today. Oil stocks are up slightly. Consumer defensive is up slightly. It's a defensive trading day, probably because yields surged today after the PPI report came in much higher than expected. Both headline and core figures of PPI came in multiple times higher than expected today. 0.3% headline figure for January. Core PPI jumped 0.5% in January. They were expected to be 0.1% each. This is not a good look for the disinflation story, especially after the CPI also surprised to the upside on both headline and core on Tuesday. On the other hand, housing starts and building permits for January came in much lower than expected. Multifamily starts were down 36.8% year over year in January. Single family starts decreased in January, but were up 22% year over year. That's good information because what really matters to the growth, GDP growth, is really the single family. So single family subline item seems still pretty healthy, but multifamily starts have dropped sharply back to COVID levels, really. And that's in line with what we've been seeing with the record supply units under construction of multifamily coming online this year. Total housing starts in January were well below expectations. However, starts in November and December were revised up sharply. GDP growth tracking Q1 moving down from Bank of America. Overall, this left our Q1 US GDP tracking estimate, which kicks off with today's print at 0.9% quarter over quarter seasonally adjusted annualized rate, 1/10 below our official forecast. Our Q4 tracking estimate declined by 0.3 to 3.1% quarter over quarter seasonally and adjusted. Goldman, we lowered our Q1 GDP tracking estimate by 0.2 percentage points to 2.3%. So GDP growth figures are being revised down. Not a good day for GDP growth and not a good day for disinflation story. But again, 1 month data is not a trend. What will happen from this data series, today's data, is that I would expect the probability of a rate cut to decline in the coming days. So rate cuts are looking more likely for June, maybe, probably second half of the year. And then there's a chance that it might not happen until after the election, just because I don't think the Fed will want to look political going into an election. Joe Tegmeyer points out that there are about 30 Cybertrucks on the East Calibration lot, 27 on the Southwest Temporary Staging lot, and approximately 25 more in the new West Outbound lot. So that's a total of 57, 60, 82 Cybertrucks. He says more coming the factory. So that's about 500 a week if we assume all of that was produced in one day. According to the poll in the live chat, most people expect that Tesla will get to 5,000 a week by the end of the year. I also saw a Cybertruck this morning parked nearby, so I went up to it, looked around, looked for any sort of quality issues, and I didn't see any. Tesla introducing more referral program credit redemption. If you refer a demo drive via Tesla's referral program in the US, you will now receive 1,000 credits, up from 100 credits if they complete the drive by March 1st. So lots of incentives for February sales, lower prices, more incentives, more referral, redemption items. Powerwall 3 is now available in the US. Elon says Powerwall 3, the most important thing about Powerwall 3 is that it can handle peak power of 30 kilowatts, which is enough to handle your dryers and air conditioners. A single Powerwall is now enough for most homes. which I believe simplifies installation. 2 days ago, Troy indicated that Tesla increased the price of the Model 3 long range in the US because of supply problems caused by the Model 3 production pause and slowdown at the Fremont factory due to Highland upgrade. Troy also says if Trump is elected, the $7,500 credit is in danger. That was supposed to last until the end of 2032. If Trump is elected, Troy believes that the federal tax credit may not survive. Troy says the new VINs that are coming out for Cybertruck are as expected. At Giga Shanghai, Model 3 production was down in August and September because of the Highland upgrade. 21,330 in August, 18,104 in September, and 28,547 in October. However, Fremont seems to struggle more. It could be because Fremont is an old factory. Troy says the Model 3 production issue in the US because of the Highland upgrade affects all Model 3 versions. EV1 says, please note that Troy presents opinion, speculation, conjecture as fact. I don't know. I mean, the guy has been most accurate as far as I'm concerned. But, if anybody can prove otherwise, welcome to present your case. OpenAI Sora yesterday got a lot of attention, text to video, and Omar posted a clip from a presentation last year, Ashok explaining how Tesla has trained a generative text to video model on their dataset so that they can augment training data and provide many variants on an example with just a simple English prompt. Ranger the dog in live chat says EV tax credit is safe. Republicans are not good at revoking benefits once they're given out. EV1 points out the same. Red states will reap the biggest rewards from Biden's IRA. Another strong U.S. consumer sentiment reading, says Mohammed Al-Arian, the highest since 2021. The February University of Michigan Sentiment Index climbed to 79.6, slightly below the consensus forecast of 80. At the same time, consumer expectations for inflation edged higher to 3.0% for both the next year and the next 5 to 10 years. He also says, like the CPI data, PPI inflation just came in hotter than expected, lays out the numbers. Per earlier posts, take this as a further indication that the last mile of inflation battle is more complex than many had assumed. On initial claims, he says weekly jobless claims fell to 212,000 below the consensus projection and confirming the continued strength of the labor market. A notable miss on retail sales, however, at both the headline and core levels, negative 0.8% and negative 0.6% respectively, compared to the consensus forecasts of basically flat. That's interesting. People are interpreting this as stagflation. Yeah, I thought January was warmer than usual. That should have led to, interesting. Bloomberg's review found 22 banks with $10 billion to $100 billion of assets hold commercial property loans 3 times greater than their capital. Half of those firms had growth rates surpassing the thresholds laid out by regulators. The tally was even higher among banks less than $10 billion of assets. 47 had outsized portfolios, of which 13 had swelled rapidly. So smaller banks are more exposed to commercial property by, the difference is wide, multiple times more exposed. Japan has unexpectedly fallen into a recession after its economy shrank for 2 quarters in a row. The country's GDP contracted by a worse than expected 0.4% in the last 3 months of 2023 compared to a year earlier. It came after the economy shrank by 3.3% in the previous quarter. The figures from Japan's Cabinet Office also indicate that the country has lost its position as the world's third largest economy to Germany. Economists had expected the new data to show that Japan's GDP grew by more than 1% in the fourth quarter. So that's a massive miss. And Mohammed Al-Arian says, data speaks to a slowing global economy with the Eurozone and to a lesser extent, China also facing growth headwinds. The US remains for now the main engine of global growth. 1,000 referral points for every demo drive you refer before March 1. There have been numerous reports in recent days that Tesla's Cybertruck is already rusting, but that's not entirely accurate. Yes, rust spots are forming on the stainless steel panels, but it's not what everyone is making out to be. The idea that Cybertruck is already rusting appears to have come from a post on the Cybertruck Owners Club forum that was picked up by Business Insider with the catchy headline that the electric pickup truck was starting to rust in the rain. Naturally, this caused concerns as the Cybertruck has only just been launched, and if the panels were starting to rust, this would be a massive design flaw and a major warning flag to potential owners. The headline of the Cybertruck rusting in the rain evoked mental images of the typical rusting you would see on aluminum car bodies, where the panels are flaking away and literally turning to dust. However, what was happening on the Cybertruck was completely different in that tiny, rust-looking spots were forming on various parts of the body. As we all know, Tesla has used a proprietary ultra-hard 30X cold-rolled stainless steel alloy for the Cybertruck. Despite those who may think otherwise, the Cybertruck stainless steel body, like all cars, still requires regular care to maintain its appearance, and in this case, it is no different. What is happening here is that surface contamination, the most popular theory being rail dust, is sitting on the body panels of the Cybertruck. Since it is stainless steel, the surface contamination is reacting with the alloy, resulting in the formation of these tiny rust spots. This isn't going to cause any long-term damage, and these tiny rust deposits can be easily wiped off. According to the Cybertruck lead engineer, Wes Morrell, using products such as Barkeeper's Friend can remove the spots, can loosen the deposit, and you can simply wipe away these spots away. So in the end, the Cybertruck isn't rusting, but tiny rust spots are forming due to surface contamination sitting on the body panels. If you happen to live in an area where these sort of contaminants, then simply clean your Cybertruck, just like you would be doing with any other car you own. What do you think about these Cybertruck rust rumors?
First of all, it's a rumor. So and the Cybertruck, like you say, as any other vehicle, so it's need to be entertained. So I think it's just a rumor. So, but to be seen. What do you think?
Definitely a concern for potential buyers for sure, because people were thinking, I think this vehicle is gonna, stainless steel body, it's not going to rust, it's not going to need as much maintenance on the outside, what have you. But so now, some people will take a pause, but generally speaking, I wouldn't expect it to be a big deal. Esther posted that Tesla Optimus Gen 2 has arrived at Tesla Paris, France. Roland Percher points out that Tesla's store in Zurich, Switzerland also has Optimus. Tesla Model Y is more affordable than you think, says Omar. Drive yours home starting at $34,490 after point of sale incentives. Using a referral link, you can get 3 months of FSD for free as well. And Tesla is sending out emails. Take delivery this month, get $1,000 off. So incentives are rising. And we also, in the live chat prior to the X Space YouTube live chat, we talked about Mercedes telling its sales advisors that Mercedes is starting again to produce lower priced vehicles. This is a 180 from their prior strategy that they were going to focus higher priced, higher margin vehicles. So not only Tesla, but others are starting to lower their ASPs quite a bit.
What do you
But
think
there's a
their
chance.
weekly production is right now, Machine?
Probably like 50 a day.
So you think they have almost 100 on the parking lot today, but they're only producing 50 a day?
Yeah, I think it's up from 30 or so. I don't, a few weeks ago, I don't think they stepped up from 30 to 100 that quickly. I think there's a buffer, and some days you're going to see more than other days. Obviously, you have to, if you want to actually study the production rate, you have to pay attention to that lot, the movement in and out, not just what's statically staying there. That's not a production rate.
I guess you're admitting that you lost your coffee bet of 100 Cybertrucks on the lot in a given day.
Not yet, because there still isn't evidence of 100. You counted 83 plus a few more. You need to have concrete evidence. We agreed it
What was
wasn't
the
100.
end? What was the end of the bet? When
It's
does it
the end
end?
of this month. End of this
Yeah,
month.
it's gonna
Oh,
be
really?
close.
Oh,
It's
shit.
it was 17, so I have to go into the video and see if I can find 17 more.
Oh, okay. Well, why don't you come down to Texas and we'll go count together?
We might have to. We might have to go there and get like a full day so I can get the peak amount.
Anyways,
I think we're pretty close. We're on the order of 10 away, and I think Machine thought he was going to be off by a much bigger, wider margin here.
it's definitely
And why
gonna
is he
gonna
up
be
here
close.
complaining that they're not going to get to 1,000? If they're already at 500 and they're ramping, they're going to get to 1,000 by the end of March. They're going to get to 5,000 by sometime this year.
Machine, what do you think is the limiting factor for them scaling up the line today?
I have no insight into that. I mean, I don't know if I would assume it's maybe the bending of the metal. I don't know of the stainless steel, but I don't know. I don't know.
So if it's something like a machine that builds or bends or does the measurements and stuff, couldn't they just buy or make? Do you think it's a machine that they have to make or that they have to buy? Because if they could just buy it, theoretically, it's just how long it takes to deliver, and that's not going to be a whole year to deliver, I would assume.
I'm assuming they would try to, if they had some spec for what the production rate of the machine could be, that they would try to make it work to that level first before saying, it's not going to happen and just buy another one. But I think over the course of the year, they'll figure that out. And then if they realize now we can't get it up to the production rate, then we'll just buy another one. So it's obviously not a long-term issue, but I'm sure they're gonna try to solve it the right way first before spending more money on it.
Yeah, I recall when I was there at the Cybertruck delivery event, they there was a line and they had said something to the effect of they needed to connect the two floors, and right now there was like one of those dollies, I guess, where they were putting all the bent metal in and they were manually moving it, and they were gonna fully automate that part. So there's still I think a bunch of these kinds of like uh, sync points, bottlenecks that they could work out. Um, And I don't know if you remember Yaman, but like there was an operator that we spoke with, and they said something to the effect of they could run it to, or I think it was in the Sandy Monroe video. They said they could run it a certain speed, but they're not running it at that speed today. Um, and so I don't think those machines themselves are going to be the limiting factor. I think it might just be like construction and employees and things like that.
What's the track price of your leaps?
Most of them were 230.
Did you sell them?
I sold today half, and it's the half that
Wow.
were more leveraged, the ones that were expiring in the January 2025, like less than a year from now. I sold all those today, and a little bit of the longer expiration ones. I sold about half of the money.
Did you make money or lose money on those?
Well, I made money because those were all bought at 190, 180.
Oh, good. Meta, what do you think about this Rust article from Business Insider?
I don't think stainless steel rusts, so I'm a little confused at some of these claims. I think it's possible to get almost any metal to rust if you scrape it properly. Um, yeah, like if you look at most cars under the wheel well, if you don't properly, take care of it in the winter, it will rust. Salt, over applying salt can cause things to rust. So I think we're gonna need to see like pictures, evidence. It's a case by case story. I don't think this is like an epidemic. It's not like we're seeing huge panels that are all rusted. I think it comes down to care. And you know what? The easiest fix for this is get it wrapped. If you're in an area you're paying 120K for this uh, car, you could spend another 3 to 5K to get vinyl wrap on there.
Yeah, but PPF is the way to go, right?
Yeah, you could use PPF if you don't care. You could use a clear PPF if you want to have the same color. But like I've almost always wrapped all my vehicles But like if you don't get PPF, almost all cars will rust. Yeah, it's like they're acting like this is like a novel new thing. It's like it's not like there's like huge amounts of rust happening, and the whole car looks like a rusted brown, and it's like structurally unsafe.
Regardless of the facts, do you think this will reduce orders and make people delay orders, see how it plays out, or buy something else?
No, because there's so much of an order backlog. There's more than enough people to fill that backlog, and by the time the backlog actually works its way through, the people who were waiting or didn't purchase something else of that crowd, they'll see that there's enough people with it, and it's obviously not an issue. I think there's like these um, eh, there's this post I put up a little while ago there's a great graph from the book The Chasm, and they break down like different categories of people. There's like early adopters. There's I forget all the names about it, but there's this group of people in the beginning that are going to go get the product because they want the product and they're like techie and they like it. That group is going to continue to buy Cybertrucks. And I don't know that the first year is going to be high enough production to exhaust that pool of people. So I think it's not really a problem in the beginning. And then what happens is those people influence the early adopters who are also kind of like interested in tech, but they're a little bit less, they're a little more risk averse. And those people will come in. It's really after those people have been exhausted that there's like this jump to the pragmatists who, can be a little bit harder to convince. But once you convince them, then everybody else is convinced. So I don't think that we need to worry about this for a little while. I think it's more of an issue after the production is already up, and they can always make some tweaks if they need to by that point.
So you think this is something that's fixable in a few months if they had to make some tweaks, and during that time, early adopters won't mind.
Yeah, I mean, let's say worst case scenario, they have to put a paint protection film on every single panel. The way this car is built, I think they could do that pretty easily.
And still can definitely rust coming from the boat industry.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Eli, but isn't that because of salt water in the ocean?
Yeah, that's correct. But by the end of the day, it's also, like you said, it's electric process basically. It's the reaction of the salt, and there's some electric into it. And basically, if you're asking me, Meta, you know more than me for sure. But if you have some like spillage of electricity into the car or from the battery, it will cause more rust basically to create to foam. And also we use like cheap metal like zinc or some other metal to sacrifice the cheap metal to protect the expensive metal. We can do it on the Cybertruck for sure, but as I was saying, like very very quick treatment with some polish cream. I'm not talking about a machine, like the whole process of polishing the whole car, just the spot.
Yeah, I would also say I don't think that the batteries are going to spill electricity into the car. They should be very well grounded and protected. So I think the fact that it's an electric car or an ICE vehicle and it's a metal car shouldn't make a big difference. And a good test is how many DeLoreans do you see out there that are totally rusted?
You're correct. I'm supporting everything you said. People just need to not to worry about it.
How many DeLoreans do you see out there anyway? Redo says in the live chat, Business Insider just magnifying smaller issues, trying to paint a negative picture. Steam Torch says rainwater won't corrode stainless unless it rains hydrochloric acid, LOL.
I think the key here is if you're going to eat salty chips in your Cybertruck, try not to get it on the outside of your truck. If you can manage that, you'll be fine.
Okay. What do you think of all these incentives that Tesla is throwing for February sales? Do you think we're going to see a repeat of these incentives in March? Or do you think seasonality will turn orders up in March?
It's a good idea for them to give incentives earlier into the quarter, given that usually half their sales happen in like the last 2 weeks. That means they could kind of spread the load a little bit and reduce their costs in theory.
Did you expect, like, rewind 6 months? Did you expect FSD transfer to come back, or I mean, to be allowed in the first place? It
I
turned
didn't
into a
expect.
regular. It turned into a regular thing now. Like from now on, everybody will expect FSD transfer.
Yeah, I didn't. I didn't expect it to become a regular thing necessarily, but I'm not shocked by it. I don't put a lot of weight on when they say this is never going to happen or this is only going to happen or it's a limited time. They've kind of demonstrated that they're more data driven. And if it makes sense, they'll do it. But I do imagine that once V12 is out, they will probably stop allowing transfers because, in theory, by that point in time, the general public should be able to see that it's a reality. I could also see them only allowing transfers on certain older vehicles and not allowing it on newer vehicles. That could be another way to go about it. But if you're looking at it from their perspective, if one of the friction points on the sale is an FSD price, they could allow the transfer. It's not the end of the world to them because they just need to get more vehicles on the road. In fact, they could probably make it where you have to pay a certain amount of credits to do the transfer or something along those lines. Like they can find all these different ways to play with it where it doesn't really cost them anything and they can encourage more sales. My friends has been waiting for a long time, and when the FSD transfer came up, I mentioned it to him because he was looking at the newer plaids S's. However, they don't transfer the premium connectivity, and he has unlimited premium connectivity as well, and that's only like $10 a month. It's a ridiculous reason not to buy a new car, but you can even imagine small things like that they could also do for some of these older vehicle owners if they wanted to.
Gareth Carlson in live chat says they only let you transfer FSD once anyway. It's not like it's a bottomless financial pit. But I'm talking about the people who are getting FSD today. Like when they go to replace their cars, they're going to expect the same thing.
People expect a lot of things. Doesn't mean that they have to actually give it to them.
Well, Tesla's giving it to them.
I just view it as extending the useful life of my FSD, so it'll always be interesting.
I think there's a big difference in extending the ability to transfer FSD between vehicles before they've actually delivered robotaxi and after. After, I don't think anybody would complain that they say, no, it stays with the vehicle.
Do you think one way to interpret the fact that Tesla's allowing FSD transfers is that they don't expect, level 4 capability this year? If it was around the corner, why would they allow transfers? Do you have any thoughts about V12?
So the latest news was that Tesla still is going to be putting out a point release to include or to re-include hardware for vehicles, since the current 12.2 only includes hardware 3. So that's the current plan for right now. No timeline for that, but they're approaching 7 days now since that update. So we'll see how long it takes from that. I'd say hopefully we'll see something within the next couple of days, if not this weekend.
How do you feel about FSD transfers?
I think they pretty much should be universally allowed. For even myself, and I know at least 2 other individuals in person, who the inability to transfer FSD has pretty much been one of the sole reasons for why they wouldn't purchase a whole new vehicle. So it's essentially saying, well, Tesla's losing out on $40,000 to $90,000 just by not offering something that, from a digital standpoint, costs them nothing. From a product standpoint, costs them about $10,000-$12,000 currently. But I would say that being able to make a vehicle sale is still more meaningful and still produces more revenue than withholding something that I don't feel like causes too much harm across the board.
Well, the cost is the opportunity cost, right? If you allow somebody to get FSD transfer, they're not going to have to buy it again. So that's the cost. But you're saying that they're making more money on, views by selling a vehicle. It's a good demand lever, I guess. But if FSD was functioning perfectly right now, they wouldn't have to do any of this stuff because people would buy it anyway.
Yeah, I think if what you were saying just a few minutes ago is if they had delivered on their promises so far, if we've already reached even L3 or level 4, I feel like it would be a different story. There would be a lot more, I guess, value, and the necessity to be able to transfer it, I think, would probably lose its value a little bit. So I expect that to change somewhat in the next year or so once there's some more movement in that realm. But for right now, I think for any sales that it generates, even though they are losing the $10,000 to $12,000 or even the subscription, someone who would have otherwise just paid for the subscription if they didn't want to pay for the brand new FSD purchase. I think it's still good to get more vehicles on the road, get newer vehicles, get some more training data for Tesla as well, which has its own value. So I think there's definitely a give and a take.
Yeah, I also wonder what the take rate is like on FSD transfer offers. Like how many people have actually bought new cars and exercised that option?
I don't know the actual percentages, but a majority of the individuals I've spoken to, even those who had reached out like over the last 2 years prior to the most recent FSD transfers, a majority of them have actually gone ahead and purchased a new vehicle. Primarily Model Ys, not a lot of S and X, but still upgrading from what was previously a older S and X or for previously a older Model 3s with the unlimited or the full self-driving as well as the free supercharging for life.
Yeah. So right now, would you agree that Tesla is offering the most incentives that it has ever offered between supercharging miles, transfers, right? Lifetime supercharging is also transferable today. Is that not correct?
Correct, and also with the 10 times basic value for referring anyone or for the test drives, that's
Yeah. So
another
we
massive
have
incentive.
lifetime supercharger transfer. We have FSD transfer. We have 1,000 referral credits if you refer somebody for a demo drive. We have 3 months of free FSD if you purchase a vehicle. We have the lowest starting prices, and we have $7,500 tax credit for most people, eligible for most people. There are state credits. There's $1,000 discount if you use a referral credit, right? And then there's $1,000 discount if you had a Cybertruck reservation. All of that is correct, right? That's like almost 10 items.
It's a lot going for it.
Joey, what does that mean for ASPs and margins?
Well, obviously they'll go down. I guess it's just or a question of magnitude.
Yeah, I think vehicle margins. I mean, although at the same time, like Tesla will get $75 credits from the government straight, right? So that'll help margins, right, Joey?
Yeah, and I mean, like the FSD transfer, you're like theoretically you're just exchanging like a 90% margin to accelerate a sale. You know, like if I buy a new Model Y, that doesn't hit that purchase's margin. It just changes how the FSD outlook for higher margin.
How many? Let me ask you this: what's your estimate of how many 7,500 credits Tesla will receive from the U.S. government in Q1?
I would think it's like 90% of sales, so like 350 to 400,000.
Well, that's 500,000 is global sales, and so only applies to U.S. sales, right?
Yeah, so 90% of US sales. I don't know how much the US sales are.
Now, Model S doesn't qualify. Model X, if you have an option added, doesn't qualify. So Model Y qualifies, and some Model 3 sales qualify. So, and you have to qualify for income limits. So I would think it's going to be less than half the sales in US. So let's say US sales are just rough approximation. I would go to Troy for this estimate, but I would guess like maybe 10 to 15% of global sales will get $7,500 credit paid to Tesla. So let's call it 15% times 500,000. You're looking at 75,000 units times 7,500. You're looking at $500 million. And that needs to be tax affected. So that's a $500 million benefit to the bottom line. And that doesn't include the battery credits, but that's only for the 4680s, I believe. So, and we don't have that many of them in Q1. I think that vehicle margins may decline from Q4 to Q1. They probably will. But operating margins could have bottomed already I agree with Machine on that because Tesla Energy is becoming a larger portion of the business, and mega packs have high margins. You agree with all that, Joey?
Yeah, 100%.
Gareth Carlson asks in the live chat on YouTube, doesn't Tesla qualify for the credit regardless of the customer's qualification on income? I don't think that's correct. As long as Tesla gets the credit if the customer says, I qualify. And there's nothing keeping them from saying that they qualify, even if they don't, even if they make so much money. But so it depends on if they say it or not. I think eventually the largest boost to orders are going to be lower rates. Until then, I think we're going to keep seeing these incentives for a while. It's so crazy. I think there's a lot of room for improvement in selling the vehicles. Engineering is perfect, unmatched in the world. Engineering, unmatched. Selling the vehicles, I don't know why they're struggling.
I do think primarily, rates, like you said, and seasonality. Like, this is going to be the toughest half of the year. So I expect incentives to last through June 30th, is my thoughts. How many rate cuts are you expecting for this year?
I think that they're gonna look. My perspective is very different from everybody else, but it's consistent with what I've been saying for a year now. I thought that they would cut rates early because they don't want to look political in an election year. Like they don't want to. I don't think they're gonna want to look like they're supporting the current administration a few months before the election. So now that we're a few months away from the election, I don't know if they're gonna cut this year. And look at these CPI, PPI prints that came in today for January. So there's a risk now, in my opinion, that the rate cuts may wait until after the election. But we'll see. Omar disagrees with that heavily, and Machine disagrees with that. Yutzi disagrees with that as well. And even Powell said that they expect to cut a couple of times this year. But I guess we'll see. Time will tell.
Agree. I just always thought that people that were pricing in 6 rate cuts were insane. I probably fall in like the two to three camp.
What do you think of the retail sales numbers that came out yesterday for January? Negative retail sales numbers. All the GDP growth figure estimates for Q1 are coming down now across the board.
Yeah, I think people are kind of tightening up their belts, which is kind of expected. But I mean, like, I think the dynamic that we have is like retails is going to be tightening their belts quicker, but like semiconductors is like a whole different economy that we haven't traditionally had, and that is just red hot. So that's why the economy is more resilient than most people um, expected through this whole thing.
What's white hot and that cause economy to be resilient? Say it again.
Semiconductors, because you know how like people used to follow, what are the rails classified as? I'm forgetting the term.
Rails?
Industrials, like
Oh,
industrials
industrials.
used,
Gotcha.
they used to be the huge indicator on the economy for the physical world. Well, we have the new industrials, which are semiconductors, and we're in a like white hot super cycle for that. So semiconductors are causing all this resilience, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think it's a bit of a stretch. It's still a very small part of the GDP, employment, etc. So I don't know if semiconductor industry has much. I think semiconductors sales are an indication of what's happening in the economy, but I don't know if they're a leading indicator. I think it's more of a concurrent indicator. Housing has been strong. Construction spending has increased, especially in the industrial construction, like you said. So I think that's kind of one reason why the economy has been strong. Another reason is that people had lots of savings. Another reason is that households had lots of equity in their houses. Like those are, I would say, the top three reasons. But this morning we got the housing starts, big drop from month, December to January. Housing permits, big drop. And if home prices start declining to close the gap between the currently high mortgage rates, mortgage payment levels, and low rent payment levels. Like that gap is going to have to close at some point somehow. Whether the economy accelerates and rent starts going up is one way, or if home prices go down is another way, or if interest rates come down is another way. But the interest rates aren't coming down anytime soon, it seems. So I think it's going to be home prices coming down. So if home prices come down and people start feeling shaky about their equity in their house and they start restricting spending, that would lead to lower GDP, obviously. So that could be one form of how recession forms in the coming year or two. But we'll see. That's just a theory right now. So under VA_macro, these are the topics I dig into. VA_macro, I have a pinned tweet that reflects a hypothesis. I said, if the Fed doesn't cut by the end of Q2, so June meeting, then I think we might have a recession start later this year. And I'm constantly looking for data to disprove that theory. Thank you to those of you who are in live chats sporting the watch hours for the YouTube channel. I highly appreciate your help. What's your read on the latest macro data?
It's a great question. I think there's a few contrasting viewpoints about the future of inflation. Housing, as it relates to rents, given the now oversupply of apartment buildings throughout much of the United States, rents are flat year over year to slightly down. So that's going to put significant pressure on CPI as it relates to owner's equivalent rent. However, I think the benefits we've had from goods inflation over the past 12 months, that tailwind may dissipate throughout the rest of 2024. I want to comment. I think a bigger thing to focus on as it relates to interest rates, in my opinion, the focus shouldn't be on what the Fed does. The Fed controls overnight interest rates, but overnight interest rates don't necessarily correlate with long-term interest rates. And long-term interest rates is really what the North Star is as it relates to either asset prices or the cost of financing durable goods.
Oh, awesome. Thanks for taking my question. So I just continuing on the discount discussion earlier with, like you'd mentioned, maybe about 10 different promotional discounts and things available. I was curious what people's thoughts are on how Tesla kind of handles their reservation holders. As far as the Cybertruck goes, of course, everybody wants theirs, and they put their deposits down 4 years ago for $100 each. But the next step, of course, is that once you get your invitation, which was for the Founders Series for a $20,000 premium, or actually a $13,000 premium since you're getting the full self-drive anyways, you are put into kind of line again. And then last night, I don't know if you guys heard, there was a new promotion out where if you use 30,000 Tesla referral points, you get a guaranteed Cybertruck delivery in 45 days, which is wild because you have people that have been waiting, of course, 4 years. They never guaranteed that you're in a sequential order, of course. But then once you pay your $1,000 configuration fee after getting your invitation and you opt to pay the $20,000 extra for the Foundation Series to get it early, and then they do a third step, which is then let even more people kind of cut in front of you there. I was just curious what the room's thoughts were on that topic and how that works. It just seems interesting to me that they're kind of stepping on the toes of some of their earliest people that reserved and paid a premium to get it early. Thanks.
There's definitely some deviation from how they handled previous ramps. But I don't have any comments on the Hexer. I hear you. I hear your frustration. Which trim do you have? Do you have dual motor?
Yes, the dual motor. They actually the the tri-motor will not be delivered until end of 2024, they say. And I ordered mine back in early December. I got my invitation for the Foundation Series. For me personally, they said that the Foundation Series dual motor would be available January through March is their estimate. And the tri-motor would be end of 2024 with no date at all. So it's pretty telling that they're very slowly, ramping here.
Sawyer, did you hear Hexter's question?
No, what was the question?
Hexter is saying that he's been waiting for years for the Cybertruck and is frustrated that the early production is going to, celebrities or people who are willing to pay $20,000 more. And now, if you, use 30,000 credits, you can jump in front of everybody, even after Hexter put down another $1,000 for the order. And he's frustrated. What do you tell him?
I mean, I would say I think that's understandable. I mean, I think this whole process of how Tesla's given out Foundation Series invites has been quite random. It hasn't been just simply by when you reserved. It's been some people that ordered or reserved before other people got invited, and some people that were in other states got invited that weren't from, like say Texas or California, they got invited. It's been a bit of a random process, and Tesla hasn't been very transparent about it. I think they ended up deciding to make more Foundation Series Cybertrucks than they initially thought they would. That's my feeling. I think they were a little surprised maybe by the general interest in that trim and people willing to fork up, $120,000 up to. This to me, this referral program last night is mostly, I feel like, for the people that might be like 1,000 or 1 millionth in line, let's say. I think it makes more sense for those people that, like, if you're going to have to wait years for this thing because you just didn't reserve on day one or day two or whatever, that this could be a way for you to essentially get your truck earlier if you're willing to fork up the extra 20 grand for Foundation Series. It's not necessarily fair because this potentially means that people who did reserve day one might be getting delayed a little bit because these people are being guaranteed a delivery within 45 days. And for all the people that said, are being given dates of 2 to 3 months, it won't be a big delay, a few days, few weeks, whatever. But nonetheless, it's, frustration here is certainly understandable. But I think Tesla's just trying to sell as many of these Foundation Series as they can, it seems like. But the program award is gone as of right now. It looks like it's sold out. However, Tesla did say that I guess they would add it back at another date for additional slots. So yeah,
Exactly.
and one thing I'll add is the Cyber Beast is a part of this, so people can't really get a Cyber Beast for the most part right now, except for employees and special celebrities, I guess. So for people that want that, this could be a way for them to not have to wait until potentially the end of this year to get it.
That's really interesting. Hey, thanks a lot for your reply, Sawyer. First of all, your contributions to this app are unbelievable. Your commentary, everything's just phenomenal. Thanks so much for being such a great part of the Tesla community or leader in the Tesla community. But what you said is correct. And yeah, while I do feel it's unfair, I'm not actually too frustrated by it because I do understand that the mission statement has always been to accelerate the transition of electric vehicles. And Elon has always said from the very beginning, we're going to sell the most expensive units first to then increase volume, drive prices down to then introduce the next vehicle. So this is definitely in line with that same process. So I don't mind that they're willing to let people paying 20,000 extra to get it early, because that does help the company in general, and you can't win them all, but they definitely don't promise that it's just a sequential order with it. I understand. I believe it's a combination of if you've owned a Tesla vehicle in the past, and then also your order in line, and then also for new vehicles, obviously it's only California and Texas, they were taking orders for it first, but it also is your distance to the local Tesla service center or the distribution spot, because that can help. But anyways, I'm done. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks for the kind words. From a shareholder perspective, obviously you want Tesla to be able to make as much money as possible and to do really well. So from that perspective, all this makes sense. For them to want to sell as many Foundation Series as possible, the margins are just better on those versus lower trims. But certainly from a customer or order holder perspective, I could see how this would be a little annoying for those early reservation holders, especially for the ones that are like have been given a slot but are just waiting for their VINs.
Sawyer, how many people do you think have 30,000 credits?
Tesla's tried really hard to wipe people out of their credits in recent months with that Cybertruck delivery event stuff, with tours, other tickets, other expensive items. So I don't think that many people have 30,000 credits.
Yeah. It can't be more than a few thousand, if that, maybe a few hundred.
This saves Tesla a lot of money if they're just offering these type of things, because it doesn't really cost them anything. Whereas if they have to give out like free wall connectors, like you can just redeem that for like 10,000 credits. That costs them a decent bit of money.
Yeah, exactly. And they reduce their liability. Any referral credit that is not redeemed has to show up on Tesla's balance sheet as a liability. So this is how they reduce it at no cost, by moving a few people around. It's not that big of a deal. Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing well. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you a little bit. How is everything going? What's new with you these days?
I mean, the big one is getting my Cybertruck and then after 2,600 miles, taking it to service.
Oh no, what happened?
So, oops, it seems as if overnight, because the first time the alert was given was at like 6 a.m. when I wasn't yet driving it, the rear axle PCB probably failed. And yeah, it's basically crab walking anywhere I drive it.
Damn, that sucks.
So you're not happy with the quality?
I've been happy with the quality otherwise. I just, unfortunately, right now, don't have the Cybertruck that I just bought. It's in service, and while I've asked them to look into other ways to get the part, their current estimate for completion of repair is March 8th. But specifically on the actual parts that they're waiting on, they don't have an ETA yet on when they will have those in stock.
So basically, you just can't drive it right now.
Oh yeah, it's completely. I mean, it's technically able to be driven. I've driven it 30 miles without rear wheel steering, without stability control, without emergency braking. Yeah, it's effectively undrivable.
That's what's going to suck about being an early Cybertruck owner. Is because Tesla's just not going to have this whole parts network built out quite yet.
Yeah. I mean, especially like this one, I kind of am blaming a little bit more of Tesla. But like, yeah, if someone gets into an accident, they could have some seriously long lead times for repairs. So, I have no reason to think that they can't fix this quickly. But I'm just at the will of the team there.
How has your experience been until now? Until you had this issue? Have you been touring it at all?
No, I separately was dealing with a different issue with Turo. Basically, they don't have 2024 Teslas that you can't just add them. You have to email them and wait until they like approve it. So yeah, I was kind of waiting.
Why? Did they say why?
No, it's just how they run their business. Again, this is
It's
I'll
like
just briefly.
we're 7 weeks into 2024.
And a lot of cars are marked as 2024 models before the turn of the year. So this is one of the many things we hope to fix with dispatch. But yeah, that was a little bit of a surprise that it took me like a full week to get the car listed. They needed some photos uh, of the car in ways that I'm surprised they needed. But yeah, they needed a whole bunch of photos just to, I guess, document the car existed. And then they allowed me in like 4 or 5 days later, but that was finally when actually the car was no longer really drivable. So I've not had a chance to tour it out yet, nor dispatch it.
Have you ever purchased a Tesla in the first few months of production before, or is this the first time for you?
Yes, I have purchased in the first few months of production, and I've had this kind of issue with them before.
So it's normal, regular growing pains, I guess.
Yeah, it just seems like they probably rely on some other external database that doesn't get updated. So if you've got a vehicle that doesn't exist in their database yet, that they do this other process that requires manual review.
Yeah. Hexter says in the replies, I literally went to the Tesla Center yesterday with two parts that are on their over-the-counter parts list for the Cybertruck, and they have neither a cost nor availability nor information. Yeah.
Breach.
Yeah.
So yeah, it sucks because especially I didn't for example, pay the 30,000 points to get this truck earlier, but someone might have and been in my situation. But more specifically, like I did drive across the country. I effectively co-bought this one with a friend of mine who was unable to afford it on his own. So he put a little bit of money down. I put the majority of the money down, and we bought it. I drove it back to San Francisco, and literally the day that I was supposed to shoot a video, kind of my review, first impressions, all that kind of stuff on Monday with Ricky Roy from 2-Bit Da Vinci. That's when I woke up and it wasn't drivable. So picked it up on
Oh shit.
Wednesday, and by Sunday we basically we drove it across the Golden Gate Bridge, and we just basically stopped there. We were planning on driving to Napa that day, but basically
Yeah,
stopped in the Headlands and came back.
that's gotta be frustrating. Sorry, Ryan.
Yeah, it's okay. Just mostly, again, the revenue part is what sucks. I, paid up, drove, effectively wasted that time when I could have potentially waited for my own, especially if it doesn't come in until March 8th.
Yeah. Sawyer, did you see the business side? I'm sure you saw the Business Insider article about rusting. We were talking earlier. Do you have any thoughts on that?
It doesn't sound like it's a fundamental problem with the truck. It just sounds like, some things are coming in contact with the surface of the truck, causing surface rust. But based on what Wes said, which is he's a Cybertruck engineer, you get some certain cleaning products and it'll just come off.
So just checking, sorry, because I didn't even interpret it as rust. I just interpreted it as like dirt, effectively. Or is kind of your impression that it
Yeah,
actually
some
is
sort of dirt
rust?
or reaction. Maybe rust is the wrong word, but just some sort of reaction. Yeah, but it seems like it's easy to clean off.
Yeah, from what I can tell, I'm categorically considering it not rust and not even necessarily reaction. Like fingerprints seep in and bug guts seep in to the steel, and then like Windex will clean it off from everything I've tried. So like I just want to be very clear that at least I don't believe it to be rust. And if someone else can present me evidence that it's rust, that's a concerning thing. But so far, I don't have a reason to believe that it's rust.
Did you have rain where you live, Ryan?
Plenty of rain and no rust yet, but we'll know after it gets back because it was raining the day I brought it into the service center. So if it's if it's rusting, I'll get it back a very rusty truck.
Okay, so it's so far it seems like it's FUD then.
Oh yeah, that's kind of why I'm trying to like really emphasize my opinion on it, unless someone presents evidence to the otherwise. Because yeah, if these trucks are rusting, people shouldn't buy them, but they're not rusting.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Please request to speak for Ryan or Sawyer. You're welcome to request to speak. The space has been going on for 2 hours. We have YouTube live chat going on at the same time.
Yaman, did you read Wes's post on the quote
Yeah, I
unquote
was going to
rust
ask you
issue?
about that. Which West are you talking about? Can you pin it up there?
Wes Morrill, he's a Cybertruck engineer. I'll DM you. But anyway, he said stainless is reactive and free iron that sits on it will rust. It's surface contamination only and can be cleaned off easily. Barkeeper's friend used here works well. Citrus Surf 77 can also loosen the deposit and simply wipe it off. If anything's stubborn, use a blue non-scratch Scotch-Brite pad and it won't leave any marks on the metal. Let me see if I can DM it to you.
Thank you for sharing that, sir.
You can just pin it up here, Sawyer.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, I just DM'd it to you, so maybe you can pin it. But yeah. So he's on the Cybertruck team.
Oh yeah.
He knows this thing very well. This truck. So
Reposted Bearded Tesla's YouTube video. Good myth busting. Stainless is reactive and free iron that sits on it will rust. Stainless is reactive and free iron that sits on it will rust. It's surface contamination only and can be cleaned off easily. Barkeeper's friend used here works well. Citrus Surf 77 can also loosen the deposit and simply wipe it off. There you go. Steven asks, did Ryan buy the Cybertruck from Tesla or from someone who personally? He bought it from, right?
I bought it from Tesla, but the loan is under both me and my friend's name.
Okay, there you go. Tesla Scope. Did you have something new or just stopping by?
I just stopping by. All the cool kids came in while I was gone from speaking earlier.
What are you trying to say? Am I not cool enough for you? What the
Oh,
hell?
you're
You're always cool.
Whatever, man. That will be recorded in your file. Hector?
And I know you bought one, and then it's your friend and yourself on the loan. My question is about I reserved 2 trucks, and my brother, who has a different last name than me, is wanting to buy the second one in a different state. So my question is, when I went to reserve and pull the trigger on my first Cybertruck Foundation Series, it asked me in the Tesla app who the primary registrant will be, and there is a spot for a secondary registrant. I'm wondering when time comes and I get the invitation for the second truck, if I don't buy it for myself and for work and I allow him to buy it, would I be able to let him kind of put his name as the primary registrant and me as the second? Does anybody happen to know that? Thank you.
Yeah, well, I can't advise that people necessarily do what I did because it introduces additional complexity. What you're suggesting is possible, especially with someone who is family. That's where I would maybe consider actually doing this. And yes, you could put them as the primary, as I am the primary, and my buddy is the secondary on the loan, even though it was effectively his reservation. So he is still on the loan. He's still on the account. It's still, all of our supercharging, whatever is, we have to reimburse each other. But effectively, yes, we are both in the loan. I am the primary, but it is his account that had the reservation.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much. I did actually see somebody that had a Tesla that was wrapped with the PPF film from Tesla themselves. I'm hoping it was one of their first ones, but I can assure you it was covered fully, but the edges, since the PPF film is, I think it's 0.22 millimeters thick, I measured, when you wrap it around and under, it won't really stay in all the areas. So across many of the seams of the car, you will see, 2-3 millimeters of kind of hanging PPF film in some of the areas, not in the other areas. You probably would never notice it unless you were looking, but I do hope they increase their quality of PPF film, and that obviously stops all the contaminants and fingerprints, which does look good.
Aaron, thank you.
Quick reminder that we also have YouTube live chat going on at the same time. I'm trying to get to 4,000 watch hours on my YouTube channel, and live hours count. And the more people we have in that chat, the quicker we get there. So I really appreciate if people go to YouTube live chat through the link at the top to support the space.
So I'm seeing that the 2023 branch is going wide right now for the latest font size recall instead of the 2024 branch. And I'm thinking the reason for this could be just because they're protecting the possibility for all of us to get the V12, since V12 is still on the 2023 branch. So I'm wondering if that's a sign of that maybe V12 is coming soon.
He was supposed to come soon. I mean, on the Q4 earnings call, Elon said, I think 3 weeks or a few weeks. And we're at that mark. So maybe another 2 weeks. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there is no other reason why they wouldn't be moving everyone to the 2024 branch. I'm just saying this is a good sign.
I mean, they just want to make sure everything's dialed in because Tesla and especially FSD beta right now is under like a lot of scrutiny and all eyes are sort of on it. So they don't want any issues, or at least, to minimize the issues the best they can. Because obviously there's a lot of journalists out there really wanting to write some negative headlines about this stuff. So they want to make sure it's dialed in.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying that there are a couple of different branches right now in the wild with V11. But there is some reason why they're keeping most of us on the 2023 branch rather than 2024, the latest update, which seems to be a safe one to move everyone to, but they're not doing this. And my thinking is that this is because the V12 is still stuck on the 2023. So if they move everyone to the 2024 branch, it will be hard to move us to V12 if it becomes available. So that's my thinking. Just some extra hope, I guess.
Thank you about Tesla. Ryan, question for you. You obviously have dozens of Teslas on your Turo network, right? Are
Yeah,
people asking about FSD when they Turo your vehicles now? Do you see an uptick in demand for having FSD on the Turoed vehicle?
I honestly am seeing actually quite the opposite. I used to have people messaging and asking for clarity, saying I only want this car if it has the FSD beta live. And at least in the last 6 months, I don't know if I've had a single person ask. That there's a small chance that's because I've updated the language in my listing just over 6 months ago to clarify, because I did have one renter that they were pretty confident that they deserved FSD beta, and this was all after their trip that they complained and said that they thought because it had the FSD package that it must have the FSD beta. And I don't know whether or not they lost the beta during their trip or if it didn't have it initially. I didn't check that. So for what it's worth, I've updated all my listings to say FSD uh, FSD package does not guarantee FSD beta. So people may either be moving on to another listing that doesn't specify that, or they might just care less at this time whether or not it does have it. Generally speaking, I have noticed less people caring about the specifics as there's more supply in the market, and relative to that supply, less demand. So I don't really know if my data is fully indicative of any market shift, but I have noticed a decreased interest for my 12 San Francisco-based vehicles.
Thank you. Interesting. How are the daily rates trending for you?
They're doing all right now. I think one other thing I just want to add to the prior statement is that also, I think more iteratively, we're kind of in like a lull of V11. I think, when V12 comes out, we'll maybe see more of that. And then also we're seasonally in a lull. A lot of people that want to try FSD beta are kind of traveling internationally. And relatively speaking, I've had less international travel in the winter than I do maybe more in the summer. People are more worried about snow chains and those kinds of questions in the winter. So I think it's just important to contextualize with that as well. Pricing has been lower, especially like December and January, it was lower. It's coming up a little bit, and demand as far as like keeping the cars out has been all right. But yeah, prices got kind of low. I was doing like Model 3s for like $50 or $60 a day, when those used to be, back 2 years ago, easily clearing $100 a day. So rates have come down, but also I don't have as many new vehicles. My newest vehicle is, other than the Cybertruck, which I haven't been able to list yet, would be my 2023 Model X. It does have the yoke steering, which similarly, I think people initially wanted to try and now more so are not looking to try. It's not like something that they can't already try elsewhere. So I actually have been considering putting a round wheel on my Model X, or as I think you may already know, selling it. But yeah, just generally speaking, that Model X goes for like $120 to $150 a day, when I was hoping it would get easily above 150, if not $200 a day. So the price that I'm putting my Model X out for is what I used to put out my Model Ys for, which is also relative to the new price of those vehicles in the market as well. I bought them closer to the highs.
Ryan, do you find that most people that rent from you are experiencing an EV for the first time, or is it mostly just people returning to you, or people have already either owned an EV or a Tesla or something?
Yeah, it definitely changes. I think just overall, I've got a sentiment of like less conversation about a lot of that. I think like initially Teslas were more novel, so people wanted to specify more that this was their first time, or that this was that they had one back at home. So overall, like the volume of comments has decreased. I think that's like kind of more natural, as like even if it is your first time, if you're the last person into the market, you're not necessarily going to say much about it. And then also, again, I do have like training videos that like an hour before their rental, it says, if this is your first time renting a Tesla or driving a Tesla, check out this video that I made back in 2020. So again, overall, the interactions of that have been lesser, but yeah, I would still say it's a good mix from the comments that I do get about being first time, already having a Tesla. For example, having a Tesla in the body shop, even though the body shop won't pay for the price of the Tesla sometimes, they'll still be like, hey, I'm going to go to Tahoe. So for these 3 days, even though my car's in the body shop, I just want to use a Tesla. So I still do get comments on that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a range, but the voices are quieter now than they used to be about that.
Do you offer a FSD as an option, or how does it work?
Yeah, I intentionally put FSD on about half of the cars in the fleet, so that way we could basically be able to better answer Sawyer's question and just see how people price differently and how people book cars differently based on whether or not it has that. And from what I've generally found, people aren't necessarily willing to pay for FSD, especially given now that they could, already FSD could be lost, but now autopilot can be lost with 5 strikes. So it makes it very difficult to monetize that. Again, I maybe have had one person in the last 20 that was like, hey, I'm booking this car hoping to use FSD. Can you confirm that it has it? And I'll still like try to work with them. And if somehow that car loses it from a prior renter, then I'll try to rematch them to another vehicle last minute. And that's again maybe 1 in every 20 renters is maybe still asking about that versus at peak it was like 1 in every 5 or 1 in every 6. So I don't really see the ability to bill them for the use of that, nor can I, within Turo's bounds, bill them for losing or collecting strikes during their trip. So it's kind of, I was kind of the first or one of the first to be vocal, saying I'm pretty upset with how the 5 strikes now also applies to autopilot or autopilot beta as they call it, because that to me was one of the best things about renting a Tesla is even if it didn't have FSD, every Tesla out there would have a lane keep that's phenomenal. And now that's not even guaranteed, and you could lose it for a week. So one of my renters that uses the car Monday through Friday might lose it on Friday, and now all my renters for the next 7 days don't have access to even lane keep.
Ryan, in the replies, you have a question. Would you please give us an update on dispatch? This is from the Ghost of Sholin.
Sure. Yeah. So Dispatch is going to attempt to solve all this, and actually, Tesla Scope Tyler is one of our partners, so I'm glad to be asked that. And I'm going to relate it to that autopilot question. Is hopefully we're going to use more and more data to know and to be able to pre-populate. We know that we can at least tell you which cars have FSD, which cars have the subscription. This might be a question for Tyler, but one of the things I want to have us do with Dispatch that I've not yet asked Tyler is, can we tell when, for example, the 5 strikes are collected, so that we would know whether or not by the next trip, for example, that autopilot might be coming back. Tyler, do you know if we'll be able to pull that information from the app or from the API?
Yeah, so Tesla just added access to their what they call the options endpoint, and that includes basically all the purchases that the vehicle has made, as well as including their configuration and a lot of other factors. And one of the things that we can see is not only if they fully purchased full self-driving, and it will list it as basically enabled, but we can also see if it currently has a subscription. And instead of just expires at being null, we'll see it'll expire at, and it'll show the next, basically the renewal date for the FSD subscription. So that's all data that you can use to populate and to be able to almost completely intelligently communicate when you're trying to rent a vehicle exactly what you're going to have access to.
And then just one last level of granularity, though, would we be able to tell how many strikes the car has, or whether or not it has all 5 strikes and it's in that 1 week period?
Not at this time. They don't make that available currently in the API. Now, a lot of the developers have been requesting for Tesla to add access to their safety score data, which a Tesla employee has responded to. And they said that they're discussing it internally whether they want to add access to that. So if they do that, for vehicles that do have safety score access, which would include any vehicles with Tesla insurance, and we're hoping they'll expand that onto all vehicles as an opt-in process in the future, those vehicles we will be able to see if they've had strikeouts, but otherwise for the majority of vehicles, at least at this time, we wouldn't be able to. But I'm hoping they will consider that in the near
There we
future.
go. Yeah. So that was kind of more just a passing curiosity that I had, but high level, the update on Dispatch is we have started beta testing for fleet management tools. Effectively, what Dispatch, for those that don't know, Dispatch is effectively a marketplace like an Airbnb, like a Turo, like a Getaround, combined with fleet management tools. And we're trying to put all of that, or we're not just trying to, we are putting all that into one place that we call Dispatch. And before we can actually launch the marketplace, we need to do a few things. We're actually fundraising right now in order to support that. We started to take checks in. We're not quite to our goal yet. We've got still a bit to go. And then, so yeah, basically that will help us set up the insurance side of the business to be able to actually host trips. And then the fleet management stuff, we can still just bootstrap a lot of that. So we're basically effectively testing what it would be like for mostly hosts, but also hosts and guests to book a trip, make sure that the car is where it's supposed to be, the odometer is read, that both the host can control the vehicle at the right times and the guest can control the vehicle and access the vehicle at the right times. So we're on the fleet management side, we've built up pretty much we definitely built up the essentials. We're still validating and like monitoring basically when Tesla changes things on their back end. I've occasionally had issues where like, oh, I'm just being transparent here, where I couldn't unlock the car with our app. And so I've been pushing Tyler and kind of our other engineers to make sure that not only will we be alerted when that fails, that we can set up some like auto fixes. So that way, if a single user experiences the inability to unlock a car, we know about it and we can respond to it. And, by the time that we launch the marketplace, we need to have that number be 99.99% success rate. And we're not there yet. And that's part of the reason why we're not launching broadly yet. We're just launching to beta users for fleet management now so that we can get that data and say, hey, we need to have much higher success rates for lock, unlock, especially, as well as all of the other commands that we're going to be pushing through the vehicle. But as far as monitoring the location of vehicle and everything else, that's already working 100% of the time. So fleet management is the focus now, with marketplace coming later this year.
Tesoscope.
I just wanted to kind of give a little notion. Is one thing I love about working with Ryan and working on Dispatch is Ryan is very serious about always finding solutions. Whenever we try to think of, oh, well, we might be able to figure this, he's like, no, I want to be able to make sure that everyone who uses this app has a great experience, whether you're a guest or a host. So we're constantly trying to find ways to think of, if A doesn't work, here's B, C, and so forth. And that's very important. Because as a Turo host, Ryan and a lot of others, there are a lot of situations where you can't access a vehicle if it's in a parking garage. Other situations where you just feel kind of like just down and out. So we're working very hard to find those little issues and try our best to work around them and provide as much of a perfect experience as possible.
Thank you, Tyler. And yeah, that what he's referring to there, I think, was one time when, from an engineering perspective, from a software perspective, Tyler was like, well, if this happens, like if Tesla's servers are down, then we're kind of down and out. I'm like, okay, but what's the solution? Like, there always has to be a plan B. We can't strand people in places. So like, one of the design elements of Dispatch will be, you'll be required as a host to leave a key card in the car somewhere in the vehicle. That I understand that people believe that they can use their phone all the time, but if anything ever happens, cellular goes down, we need to make sure that we're not stranding people. So yeah, I think what Tyler's referring to there is just this mentality of, we try to think of every situation, and if there's ever one that someone would be otherwise stranded with the technological solution, we need to have a backup solution.
Right. Ryan, if people want to work with you guys, whether for helping put the app together or fleet management or investment, how should they get in touch with you?
Yeah, just at dispatchev.com. So yeah, we're fundraising right now. We actually, one of our core engine, well, not one of our core, our front end engineer, who's capable of more than of just that. He unfortunately did have to take a full-time position somewhere else. So we are looking to hire at least one more engineer and one more business operations leader to work with me. So if you are interested in either being a beta tester, an investor, or even an engineer or business operator, feel free to reach out at dispatchev.com as we're trying to build this great platform.
Okay, perfect. Thank you both. Sawyer, what else is new today? I see there's some, you have a post on Giga Mexico.
Yeah, the governor of Nuevo Leon, Samuel Garcia, he said he spoke to Tesla management and Giga Mexico construction will start next month. This guy says all kinds of stuff that ends up being wrong, but if he said he spoke to Tesla management, then maybe it's true. Not holding my breath for that. The Wall Street Journal also released a new interview with Franz, Tesla's chief designer, today. Not much new info. Franz basically just said, Elon is still very involved in the design process, and that Elon sometimes sends him ideas from X, and he prefers in-person meetings, so he catches Elon when he can, but they don't have their every Friday in-person meetings like they used to, just because Elon has a lot more going on than he used to. And then on the affordable car, Franz said that it's similar to he compares it to VW's Beetle or Ford's Model T, in that it's a product for the masses. And he said, albeit one that feels like it's a continuation of the idea of the future. So, looking forward to that.
Any questions for Sawyer, Ryan, or Tesoscope? Please request to speak. And Tesoscope, just to kind of, I'm going to ask you the same question again because we have a round of new listeners. What's the latest on V12.2?
Yeah, so we saw 12.2 go out about 6 days ago. We're approaching the 1 week mark. Of all that I'm aware of, Tesla essentially is going to be trying to release a point release initially to the same group of vehicles that originally had access, so that they can include vehicles that have hardware 4. Currently, the previous build, 12.1.2, went out to all hardware 3 and hardware 4. They went back to just hardware 3 with 12.2, so we should expect a 12.2.1 within hopefully the next few days, possibly this weekend. That version won't initially go out to customers, at least that's what my inclination is. We might see something go out a few days after that if everything goes well, but we will see it initially go out to employees and the special groups, just to include all compatible vehicle configurations first. One point that was brought up earlier about Tesla was Tesla is intentionally making it so that vehicles that don't have FSD have been essentially pushed onto the 2024 branch updates, and they have intentionally been keeping vehicles that do have FSD purchased or even the subscription back on the 2023.44 branch. What we know is that 0.15 is the latest version of FSD 12 that has gone out to employees, while the update that's going out currently to customers is 0.14. So they are still keeping us just behind that line. Whether or not that means that we'll be getting that exact update, we're still kind of waiting for more information, but there is some intention behind Tesla's current deployment with software. So we'll hopefully know more as a community within the next few days what's going on.
Thank you for the update. And as a reminder, I post these videos, I record them after the space, and I post them on my YouTube channel. I take out all the pauses, uninteresting connection issues, uninteresting parts of the discussion, and basically reduce the time it takes to watch and listen to them to 50% of what it is. This space has been going on for 2.5 hours. So I would expect the recording to be about 1 to 1.5 hour. And you can speed it up if you want, or you can rewind, rewatch, etc. All of that is at the top of your screens, youtube.com/@valueanalyst1. You can subscribe to it and support the channel. Once I start getting monetized, I'm going to start posting the same videos on X as well. Just right now, it's a hustle to get to monetization. Omar, welcome.
Hey,
How is V12 doing for you today? Happy Friday.
doing pretty good, but not really any change. Still the old build and not 12.2 yet. So I'm hopeful that we'll get 12.2 going out this weekend.
All right, good. Is there anything you want to talk about? Would you like to comment on the Business Insider article about Cybertruck rusting FUD?
Yeah, it seems like it's not actually rusting from what I've seen. So, not the most, incorrect article Business Insider has even published this week. They published an article saying Elon's buying. Elon's buying Tesla and the Cybertruck is rusting. Well, okay, none of those actually happened.
So, Omar, and this is maybe just because I've not watched many of your videos recently. How is V12 though, the branch that you have? I mean, you're one of the few. I'd love to hear just your impression. I'm sure you've shared it already a few times, but quickly, how is it?
I mean, it's pretty good. It, is smooth. It normally goes point to point without any takeover. So I did a couple of drives yesterday. From San Francisco to Emeryville and back. We went to that supercharger in Emeryville. So on the way there, it was zero intervention, except it couldn't pull out from the curb because there was too much traffic. So I had to help it get out into the street at the beginning. But other than that, it did it with zero intervention. Then it drove back also almost perfectly, but there was one takeover on the Bay Bridge where you're exiting on Fremont Street, and then there's kind of the bus lane on the left. 11 would also have a problem where it would try and get into that lane, and 12 also had a problem. So I had to take over to prevent it from going the wrong way. But other than that, it was a perfect drive, no notes, no interventions. I think actually there was an accelerator press to get through the Bay Bridge toll booth. So overall, pretty much everyone who's driven it has been super impressed. They've noticed right away an improvement, but there are still some rough edges that leave room for improvement in 12.2.
I guess if you were to, be deciding to roll it out or not to roll it out, is like what reasons might you think that they are not rolling it out into the masses yet?
Well, so I think one is like some of the NHTSA recalls. There have been some kind of regressions on those behaviors. It does seem to have more safety critical disengagements compared to 11 because 11 was just so good and got the number so down. I've noticed, a number of issues. Sometimes it stops at a stop sign until the light turns green if there's a traffic light up ahead. Sometimes it really tries to get in spaces that are too narrow for it to fit. Like sometimes it's good and it actually works and it can actually slip into a narrow space, but sometimes it's just trying to get into a space where there isn't actually room for it. So there's like a number of sort of first build bugs like that kind of explain why it hasn't gone out to everybody.
Hmm.
But overall, everybody's like, oh my God, this is so much more comfortable, so much smoother. It's pulling off moves that would have been very challenging for 11. So I gave another guy, my friend Alfie, a ride yesterday, and he was very impressed too. So generally, everybody who's tried it for the first time, they've said, "Wow, I can't wait to get this on my car."
Yeah, of course. And that last one, I think, is just like great levels of clarity. I'm sure that Tesla's thought of this, or at least they are figuring it out. But like, yeah, obviously, like the Model 3 is narrower than the Model S, which is narrower than the Cybertruck. So it definitely, you know, it helps temper my expectations that I might be getting full self driving, especially V12 on my Cybertruck. Just thinking about, yeah, they really need miles on it to know even the width thing. That's probably a unique problem that I wouldn't have thought of until seeing some of that data on the road.
Yeah, it doesn't feel super far off to me, just based on what I'm seeing. I would think maybe we could see a wide release in March and hopefully a release to early access testers within February, but I have nothing to back that timeline up except just my hopes.
Cool. Thanks for the update.
Compared to your first experiences with the very earliest V11 builds and even version 10, would you say that these initial builds of version 12 are a lot more stable and at least more capable than the prior experiences you've had?
Yeah, I think I would say that this first V12 build is more stable than any of the early V11 builds I've gotten. Like usually with V11, every new version kind of starts off a little more rough, a little worse. This build, I think, has much less of that, but obviously still some issues. What I am excited about, though, is this referral program thing where you can get 1,000 points for signing up someone for a test drive. I've been talking to my roommate, and I'm like, dude, we got to sign up as many people as physically possible, get you acceleration boost. Like, we could get you FSD for like 3 years straight if we just refer enough people in. So it's kind of a crazy promotion until the end of the month because you just have to sign them up. They don't have to do anything. And they'll give you something that, could be worth about $66 a person you sign up. 1,000 referral credits come out to $66. Okay. Steven.
Yeah, question for Omar and FSD. Is FSD smart enough to, if you put in a destination and it knows, oh, I'm going to have trouble on this destination, so I'm not going to even attempt it, or I'm going to try a different route. Is it that smart, or am I kind of dreaming here?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're really talking about.
Well, you were saying that when you get off the Bay Bridge, it did a disengagement because it,
No, it didn't do a disengagement. It just was gonna go the wrong way. So
okay, it was going to go to
the
wrong.
left lane goes to a bus depot where no car is supposed to go. So you're gonna get stuck if you go that way and have to ask them to like move the cones to let you turn around. It's basically a total disaster. You don't want to go to the bus depot. And then to the right, there's the lane you actually have to go in. So 11 would kind of go into the bus lane, then realize its mistake and come back. With 12, it went into the bus lane, then realized its mistake and went back, but then went back to the bus lane. And so I had to disengage just to get it to go the right way. You know, I could have probably not disengaged and it wouldn't have crashed or anything, but I would have ended up at the bus depot.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm trying to say is there are certain places that you drive that you know that it's going to have trouble. Could it avoid those areas and just not go there? Or is that not what we're trying to accomplish here?
I mean, it definitely could if you wanted to just sort of paper it over. And they certainly have data on that, but the goal is really to just make it work anywhere.
Steven, would you like to ask your question to Ryan that you posed in the live chat?
Oh, okay. So earlier, Ryan, you mentioned a part that was broken, and I didn't quite understand exactly what that part was. So is this specific to a rear wheel drive only? And could that part be obtained from maybe another Tesla, or rear wheel steering only? Is it like,
Yeah. So just to clarify, yeah, it seems as if my Cybertruck is the first, potentially the only, probably the only, with a rear wheel steering failure, where basically, yeah, it locked at like a 3-degree angle, and the computer wasn't able to talk to the wheels and get it back out of that angle. So, um, from what I can tell, it's probably something like a PCB failed, which is actually like relatively concerning. Um,
So
it's
your rear wheels are permanently angled.
that currently, yes, there is not a way within the vehicle, as a normal user
So what
to.
was it like to drive that? What did
I've
it
got
feel like?
video. I've got video of it. I mean, it's actually not particularly obvious, other than my steering, squircle was at like a 8 or 10 degree angle. So like, I felt like I was turning. If I let the wheel just go back to its neutral position, I effectively was, turning to the right. So yeah, I was crab walking in a vehicle that's not yet supposed to have crab walk features. So in a way, it gives me hope that they'll be able to push crab walk in the future. But yeah, you could see, if you're driving directly behind it, you'd see a little bit of the driver's side of the vehicle while also seeing the rear. And if you're driving in front of it, you'd see the opposite side of the vehicle and as well as the front.
And that was funny. I was at the San Francisco Service Center for a test drive right after you dropped it off, and I had just gotten my VIN, and I was like, "Hey, is this my Cybertruck here, waiting for me?" And you're like, "Nope, that's mine. Just dropped it
That
off
was
at service."
that was the saddest thing. Yeah, but not only did I miss you, but I literally just dropped it off. I watched them put it on the ramp. I got home, opened my phone, and saw your tweet from 5 minutes earlier. So like, it had literally just been. And yeah, it's just, it's sitting there right now. I've asked them. I think the follow-on question was like, could they get that part from somewhere else? One, they should have extra parts in Texas, for this kind of thing. I guess not. I don't know if it'd be in Texas, but they should have extra parts for this. But separately, I have asked, like, hey, is there any chance that you guys could like pull whatever parts are missing from like a showroom vehicle or from an engineering vehicle? it just sucks right now not having a truck that I just bought, and for multiple weeks. So, yep, just sitting on my hands here.
Steven.
So they could take it from Omar's vehicle. So
Now that's an
Ryan,
idea. I like the way you think.
so I want to ask a little bit more about this. You're calling it a PCB. What I understand about what you're saying is, like on a front wheel drive car, you have these PCB boots, and they're like located right next to the wheel. And it's like where the linkage is that helps the front wheels turn. Is that what you're kind of talking about?
I think it's important to consider this is a drive-by-wire car.
Oh,
So
okay.
so that would be a unique difference between this and everything else. So like, again, the way that it failed and the fact that it failed is not safety critical. So I can see where maybe the specific part that failed doesn't have effective backup. But yeah, that's where my mind is thinking that it's possible that that either a mechanical linkage, or I would say potentially more likely, uh, it's technically possible it's a software failure that they're like it just because I had parked the car at a certain angle and then a software update came and it just didn't know how to deal with that. So there's many things that could have happened. It's either hardware with a mechanical linkage that failed, which is I think is unlikely given the car was parked when the error was first recognized. So that's where I go to more of like a PCB for a drive-by-wire system, or a software issue where just some conditions were not being considered. And given all of that, I'm all but certain that Tesla is looking specifically at my vehicle to make sure that this doesn't happen to others. So whether again, even if it was caused by software that caused the PCB to fail, they're probably looking at this as like, oh, this is things we need to prevent. I look to software or PCB rather than hardware because it was parked when it occurred.
Yeah, I mean, that's the joy of being an early adopter. We'll see what mine is like when I get mine, but hopefully they work out the kinks on yours.
You're welcome. You're all very welcome.
Ryan, is it true that vinyl wraps yellow out a little bit quicker, or did you get a vinyl or PPF? Are you going to?
I'm not sure about the yellowing. I mean, I've had some of my cars, like my Model Y. I got one of the first ones in like March of 2020, and it's starting to dry out a little bit on my first Model Y, with 120,000 miles on it. Yeah, I mean, I've had generally success with vinyl, and I think because I'm going to do it myself, I'm probably going to apply vinyl to my Cybertruck, at least this first one. And I've ordered some vinyl from Test Bros because they've got some pre-cut kits. And while I've done this before, and like it's definitely possible just to take the raw vinyl and whatnot, I definitely want to try a pre-cut kit because of just speed. I need to be focusing on dispatch, not wrapping a Cybertruck. So that's the good news about my Cybertruck being in the shop, is that most of my time is back focused on dispatch.
All right,
Yeah, I
great.
think I'm gonna go with the black on mine.
We'll be twins then.
Any questions for Sawyer, Omar, Kilowatts, or Steven? Please request to speak. Steven, thank you very much for moderating on the other side. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back over there. I think it's more fun.
Yeah. All right. Omar, what do you think about anything? What's on your mind?
Nothing. I think it's gonna be a great weekend. We're closing above 200 for the weekend, so I consider that a minor victory. And I'm just hoping we see FSD Beta 12.2, right? That second data point. See how fast it's improving. Maybe get it out to all the early access testers. We saw those guys outside Chuck's house testing it. Hopefully they're testing it because they're about to send it to him soon. And we can get, his great videos with the drones and all the really scientific testing he does and all the great testers around the country who sort of try it out in their own way. It would be really great to see that. I think it's really going to be an incredible moment as we see it rolling out on X and people sort of give their impressions. So I'm super excited for that. I think it's going to be sort of just a major sentiment shift. I think what Tesla's doing with AI is super underappreciated, right? Everybody's talking about, OpenAI's text to video models. And, quietly a year ago, Tesla has text to video models that they've trained on their own data set. Now, I don't know if it's better than Sora or where it's at today, but they've been using this to augment their training data set. So it's pretty incredible some of the stuff they're doing there, where they can type in, a piece of text and change the video conditioned on the prompt. And yeah, I think they've been really working on this for over a year, but people haven't seen what they've been working on. So that moment where you finally lift the curtain off and show everybody on their own cars is going to be one of the most incredible moments, I think, since the first FSD beta wide release in 2022.
So Tesla has been using internally a process that is now becoming popular in public after OpenAI's announcement. Is that correct? Or are they different somehow?
Well, I mean, OpenAI hasn't released Sora yet, but there have been text to video models before. People are just saying, "Oh, Sora looks so good" compared to other models we've seen. Tesla also has a text to video models, but it's more sort of domain specific to driving. They're really using it for their training data set. But they mentioned in their CVPR talk that it doesn't need to just be driving videos. You can actually put YouTube videos or any sort of other videos, and the model just sort of learns the physics of the world just from sort of seeing these videos. So it is kind of similar to Sora in a way. I mean, they're kind of putting their own twist on it for driving data, but it's able to, so let's say you see a really weird situation. You see a clown riding on a unicycle while the light's green or whatever. And you go, okay, this is a really rare failure case. Let me generate a few twists on it. Let's say, okay, I want you to be driving in the right lane. I want you to be driving in the left lane. I want you to have to make a right turn and wait for this clown.
I
And
want
it
the
can
clown.
actually,
I want the clown to fall off the unicycle.
yeah, exactly. I want the clown to fall. You can basically give it these text prompts and it can generate variants of the data and it can actually generate all 8 cameras around the car with this generative AI approach. So previously, Tesla would have to use like this video game simulator. Like they essentially made a video game that looks as realistic to the world as possible, and they would have to use that to generate synthetic training data. But with this approach, they don't even need the simulator because generative AI can just sort of generate the synthetic data just from a text prompt and a video input from the fleet.
Great. Thank you for explaining to us. Any questions for Omar or Ryan? Please request to speak. Have you tried Gemini 1.5 yet?
I have not tried it yet, but I'm definitely impressed with the 10 million token context length. In models like OpenAI GPT, you typically have a context length of, say, 32,000 tokens or 64,000 tokens. A token's kind of like a word. Sometimes it's like a fraction of a word. But, obviously 32,000 or 64,000 words is a lot, but it's not enough to, for example, throw a whole book in there and say, okay, summarize this book for me. So I think that was one of the really standout features of Gemini 1.5 Pro was the 10 million token context length, which is really impressive and definitely opens up a lot of new applications. I think Sora sort of stole the thunder out of the room. A lot of people were saying, hey, did OpenAI wait until Google had this big release to sort of overshadow them with the text to video model? But nonetheless, Gemini 1.5 Pro and its context length is pretty impressive.
Now, that context length on the user side for average Joe, how does that reflect on the user side? Is that more accurate answers? Or you can ask it more? Does it think deeper? Like, how would you explain that to an average Joe who doesn't understand what a token means?
It has a bigger memory. It's not going to forget stuff that's, longer than the context window. It can have a bigger memory, fit more information, and, summarize a much larger volume of text, process a much larger volume of text, look through your data, and not have this sort of thing where putting new information in causes old information to fall out.
So, for example, on FSD, something like that, how would that reflect on FSD user experience?
I mean, it's a little bit of a different comparison because FSD obviously isn't an LLM, but it might mean, for example, just to kind of make an analogy in FSD terms, that FSD could remember more of the past. Instead of the last 10 minutes, maybe the last few hours, right? So that might be useful for a few different things, but it's more relevant in text than it is in driving. In driving, you kind of have a situation where only the most recent information is really relevant.
Right. I was going to say, so when you say it might help, a larger memory might help in very few different ways. What are those ways on FSD, for example?
Sorry, I actually got to run.
Okay. Tesla Yoda?
Yeah, because my I guess my day job involves training LLMs and chatbots as well. I could maybe provide an example. So in the language model scenario, more tokens allows you to retain what we call short-term memory.
Ryan, I got a question for you. On your Turo, in between, let's say a car is rented from 9 to 11, and then there's another person coming in from 2 to 4 p.m. Do you
Mm-hmm.
go and do anything between 11 and 2?
Yeah, generally I'll just check on the vehicle, make sure that it's good to go. I specify with all my rentals that like I ask that it's returned in the same condition as received, and a good large percent of my renters do that. Some, for example, they'll take it to Tahoe and they'll bring it back late at night, and they either didn't realize it was dirty or it's late at night and they'll just not be able to or choose not to clean it. So in those cases, yeah, I'll have to take it to a car wash real quick. I've got a couple that are my
What's the
favorites.
So are your cars kind of spread around town, or are they in two location nearby you?
Yeah, yeah. So I very fortunately have a parking lot that I rent that's like literally outside of my apartment window. So it's yeah, just incredibly convenient for me to see the cars. I'm actually changing apartments within the building. I won't have quite the same view that I have today. I'll have a different view on Monday. But yeah, there's a parking lot that I use, and then I'll also use SFO and have my renters pay to have it delivered there.
Gotcha. Okay. So you charge a delivery fee for the airport pickups and drop-offs.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Partly because of
Yep.
time, and also just because like at some point parking has to be paid, so I would be taking a double whammy hit if I didn't bill them for parking
Yeah,
there.
that makes sense. Do you use the auto pricing function when setting prices mostly?
I do now. I used to not. I used to kind of just interact with it more. Frankly, because I've now focused on dispatch more, that I just don't have the time to interact as much with the pricing. What I used to do was basically try to maintain like 66% rental utilization, because if you're below that, then you're pricing too high, and if you're above that, then you're pricing too low. So I would kind of change prices every day or so, just $5 up down here, $5 over here. But yeah, now that I've got like 12 vehicles, that's harder. And now that I'm focusing on building the other business, it's harder. So I'm worried less about making every dollar I can, and more about just learning how people use the cars, and
Right.
while also maintaining them.
That 66% utilization target that you mentioned, is there any magic to that, or is that something you kind of shoot rule of thumb you shoot for?
Yeah, it's just a rule of thumb that I built. I mean, quite frankly, it was partly based out of my initially when I started really getting serious about this. I had 3 Model 3s, and I wanted to use one at all times. So I would kind of price accordingly, and then like the last car that was left, I would increase the price for, so that way it was almost unrealistic it would get booked. And the worst case scenario, if it did get booked, I'd rent something else, or I would take public transit like Bart. And this was back when I worked at Tesla down in Fremont and Palo Alto. So it's loosely based on that, and then just looking forward. I mean, you can never really get 100% utilization. That's back to back to back constantly, and even Turo, it requires a 2-hour break in between trips, partly to make sure that someone can run late and that you can, check on a vehicle in between trips. So you're never going to get to 100%. Let's just say the highest you could reasonably get, even making it basically free, would be 95%. And then, yeah, I definitely want more than 50% utilization. Um, and so, yeah, 66% is a rough rule somewhere in that 50 to 95%. And so, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm talking to a close friend of mine in Austin, and he was complaining that the utilization of his car had dropped. So he asked me to look into it a little bit. And um, I got added to the account. I kind of monitored it for a little bit and said, dude, you're setting your prices really high compared to some other options. Why don't you just use the automated version, automated pricing? And so he said, well, they're too low. And I said, well, what's your incremental cost per mile every time your car is rented out? With a Tesla, it's very low. It's really just a depreciation. But he was going out to the airport between rentals, and each run for him was like an Uber ride, a $10 there and back. Yeah, another alternative is obviously you can use public transportation, but then you're increasing the hours of your own time that you're spending on it. But then I said to him, I said, why don't you just not go? Like unless there is an issue, unless a reported issue by the previous tenant, just not go and save $20 each time, but increase your utilization from it was like 20, 30% to something higher, 50, 60, 70%. And yes, you're risking a little bit that there might be an issue, that you might get a bad rating later on, but kind of monitor that, try that, take on that risk and save each time 20, $30. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean that's a really interesting space to be in, because I think one of the things that you're not going to have people self-report is smoking in the vehicle, and so that's a reason to check on the vehicle in between trips. And then that's almost depending on his exact situation, I would almost recommend having one vehicle, like for example, maybe your most premium vehicle or your least premium vehicle, as one that you know that you're going to get less utilization on, and have that vehicle be the one that you use to go check on your other one. So I almost in that situation, if they're almost all airports pickups, or I'll call maybe remote pickups that you have to check on, I would probably first say, dedicate a vehicle that you can use. But that's partly why actually I've got so many vehicles too, is I've got so many that the majority of the time when I've got an SFO drop off or pickup, there's already one of my other cars there. So I can basically drop one off, pick a different one up. It sucks having to swap them, knowing that like, in an ideal situation, the renter could have just used the other car. And sometimes that's possible, but more often than not, calendars don't allow for that really to happen. But that's what I'll do is I'll just, I live close enough to the airport. I'll take one of my cars, let's say Forest, my green Model 3, to the airport, drop it off, and bring back Flow for its next rental this weekend. So kind of a mix set of suggestions. I think you're in the right ballpark of things, but truly taking on that risk, if you're not able to document damage within 24 hours, uh, you're not really even able to request compensation from anyone in that situation. So the true worst case, and where I wouldn't recommend what you suggested at all, is if the car is going to sit for more than 24 hours between rentals. But yes, if renters are back to back, and you can ask, hey, would you mind just letting me know the condition of the car? Would you document it with photos before you get started? And if pin to drive is on, so you can basically prevent them from driving away before sending the photos, that is an option. And that is some of the kinds of thoughts we're having around with dispatch, where
Yeah.
if a prior renter has uploaded photos within 24 hours, we could rely on that rather than requiring the host to take end and start photos.
That's great insights, Ryan. That's excellent. I mean, it's so apparent, just like Tezoscope said, that you've thought about these things so deeply for so long. I mean, just right there in 10 seconds, you just added so much value, and I can take that to my friend. That's
Thank you very
awesome.
much. Yeah, I mean,
Eh,
and I'll just briefly say, the best products come from people that use the products, and so I hope that the insights that I've developed over the last 5 years can be things that benefit everyone.
Absolutely. Any questions for Ryan? Please request to speak. We have a question from YouTube live chat from Steve. The insurance thing was always a barrier for me on Turo. I just didn't know what level to choose, or if I should decline Turo coverage and bring my own. How is Ryan/Dispatch handling insurance?
That's the most difficult question, especially for such a young stage startup. Insurance is one of those things where we hope to be able to provide more data to our insurance provider. So in the long term, we'll be able to bring prices down below what our competitors are offering. But early on, it's going to be high, and that's again why we're getting investment, is basically to be able to afford the kind of insurance that we need to run this kind of platform. So yes, I mean, backing up to the Turo side, because Turo effectively self-insures, they've got liability coverage with other providers, but then within like collision, they're effectively self-insured. They call it a protection plan. It's its own thing. And so yes, depending on what level you're comfortable with, like even just with my Cybertruck, it's so new. Part of me wants to choose their 60% take rate, where I get 60% and Turo gets 40%. That's, seems high, especially given they're taking other fees on top of that. But at least what you get with that 60% rate is that they will cover you for lost rentals. It's a little bit screwy. It makes it seem like, whatever rate the vehicle would have been rented out at. So let's just say I've listed the Cybertruck, and for this next month, it's got like 5 bookings. Awesome. But the next couple of months, it has 0 bookings. So if my Cybertruck was to go out of service for 3 months because of an accident, they're only going to pay me out for those remaining 5 bookings, and I'm not able to like get other bookings or other data to support additional revenue. So that's a reason to not choose their 60% rate, is that it seems great because it like seems like it totally protects you, but especially if your car is out of service for a long period, it doesn't really protect you the way that you'd hope. We hope to again solve those kinds of things, be more fair on that, but until we're much further down the road, we won't have an answer on that specifically. But that's why most of my cars are on the 90% rate, higher take rate, higher deductible. And the one other way that I get screwed though is if if a renter causes an incident below a certain dollar amount, after their deductible, I then have my deductible hit. And so there's times that like I've had $2,000 of damage where my renter has already paid their 2,000. Now I have to pay my 2,000, so we end up paying 4,000 to repair $2,000 of damage. Turo's not great at this. I'm trying to find ways that we can be better.
Thanks, Ryan. Steven has a question in live chat. Ask Ryan if he recommends his renters to take videos or photos of exterior before driving away to avoid issues when cars returned.
Yes, I do, and that's going to be one thing that again we push with Dispatch, but specifically, Turo puts a lot of the onus on the host to take photos, not quite as much on the guests. What I basically tell people across the board, at a minimum, both hosts and guests should take 16 photos, 4 sets of 4. I say 1 photo of each side, which will overlap with the 4 photos, the 1 photo of each corner. You got 4 of each side, 4 of each corner, 4 of each wheel, encompassing the whole wheel. And then you'll have 4 looking in the glass of each window. That's not a perfect solution. Obviously, if there's like dirt in the wheel, in the footwell, it doesn't really cover that. It doesn't cover everything perfectly, but it covers all the major damage spots. And the biggest thing that I'd say with anyone that wants to host on any platform is you want overlapping photos. People who don't have experience might think, oh, once I've got the photo, I'm good. But light can hit the car in interesting ways, and Turo and any insurance provider will really want to know what damage is new versus what's not. So overlapping photos from different locations helps reveal that. So actually, when I go up to the windows, I do 1 wide and 1 ultra wide, just so I've got slightly different versions from all angles. So I actually end up taking a little bit more than those 16. I take 20 as a minimum. And again, we're going to suggest at least that, but that would be what I would tell people: is have yourself take those photos and have your renter take them at the start of their trip, because then you also know that they have the ability to take them. at the end of their trip. So it's kind of a way of basically saying, hey, you know how to do this. And so they can't say, oh, I ran out of time. I didn't know how to take those photos when I was leaving, because before you even give them the pin to drive, they've already shown you that they know how to take those photos.
That's excellent advice, Ryan. Thank you so much. There are people in live chats, in the replies, sending you their thanks. They say good advice. They say good info. It's nice to have you up here, especially in this expertise area. You have so much knowledge. If
Thank
people
you.
want to get involved with Dispatch, please reach out to Ryan.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, I'm not getting paid to raise money for him or anything like that. So he
Yeah.
clearly knows what he's talking about.
And then just the last thing on that, hi@dispatchev.com would be how you can reach me, either, again, to join Dispatch as a beta user, get on our wait list, or potentially invest, get involved in any way. That's the best way to reach me on that topic. Dispatch
Okay,
EV.
great. Great. So this space has been going on for 3 hours, and we started early at YouTube Live, an hour early for pre-gaming, an hour early before that. So that's 4 hours going on. We have a poll going on YouTube Live chat. When will Cybertruck get to 5,000 a week? We have 427 votes. 42% said September 2024, and 58% after that, October, November, and then 31% is December 2024. So hopefully by the end of this year, Cybertruck Production, according to votes, will get to 5,000 a week. I think this, gives me quite a bit to edit today. It's going to take a while. I hope to get it out first thing tomorrow morning. If you want to support the channel, please subscribe to the YouTube channel at Value Analyst 1. At the top of your screens is the link. Ads revenue from YouTube channel supports, allows me to keep these X spaces free and open to everybody instead of hiding it to behind subscription. Thank you very much, everybody. That was a long, great discussion. Thanks, Ryan. And I will talk to you all next time. Take care. Have a good night.